reviews, and today we continue on with Patron Appreciation Month. There's some folks out there that watch my videos and like them. I don't know. And then there's some people that like them even further and click subscribe, and then there's some people that like them further and go that extra step and actually sign up for my Patreon. And to those people, I wanted to have a special thank you. So the best way I could think of to do it was to ask them, what do you want me to watch and review? As long as it's horror, and as long as I haven't reviewed it before, I'd go ahead and put myself through it. And today I'm taking on a double feature of movies to review with The Houses October Built and The Houses October Built 2, suggested to me by Breha Organa, a longtime supporter of my channel and patron. Thank you very, very much for your support. This one goes out to you. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to do the difficult thing here and have a spoiler-free talk about both movies at once so that I can get into a spoilery talk in just a little bit here. But for those folks that haven't seen the movies yet and were wondering whether or not they should, whether they're any good or not, I do want to at least talk about the movies generally and address those folks. So both of these movies were directed by Bobby Rowe, made in 2014 and 2017 respectively. And they both have generally the same premise of a group of friends going out and visiting real life, as in our world, haunts. Haunted houses, looking for the most extreme haunted houses possible. And they're in a big RV as they travel across the country going to these haunts and documenting the process, but also they manage to eke in a little bit of a fictional narrative. They have some characters popping up in these haunts that turn into fictional narrative characters later on, as well as getting folks to engage in the storyline with them, to have their characters try to find the most extreme haunts possible. And generally, that's all I'll really say about these movies in a spoiler-free fashion. They're both found footage films, and they both kind of rely on a central theme of mistrust. There actually have been, prior to COVID at the very least, more and more extreme haunted houses, and even police having to be, involved in cracking down on some of them with some of their behavior. But it's generally the notion that when we pay our money to these places and we say, I want you to scare me in the most extreme way possible, how well do we know these people that we are entrusting with our health and our safety and our enjoyment of the evening, and in some cases, yes, even our lives? And is that trust ever misplaced? How far is too far? Now, I would have to say, on a critical level, both of these films share in their strengths and their weaknesses to different degrees and to slightly different levels, but for the most part, the movie really starts with the lull. As they're going through these haunts, it's just generally them experiencing these haunted houses. It's almost like a documentary of haunted hayrides and escape rooms and haunts from across the country. And yes, there's some creepy shit that pops up in there. There's some characters that kind of go a little bit above and, until ultimately they have to, whoa, and move on. But then weird stuff starts happening.
Hey guys, is that the girl from the haunt?
We're 100 miles from there. There's no way to stop.
It's kind of that central theme, but it's not until that weird stuff really starts happening that the movie really starts getting interesting, which in both cases is at about past the halfway mark, really. Prior to that, it's just kind of little hints and little visual cues that you have to really watch for to pick up on. So pacing is an issue, and as far as both movies' sets of characters, I would have to say that it really felt like they were just kind of playing some elaborate, exaggerated version of themselves. It was basically just friends interacting with one another in a friendly banter kind of level. It kind of gets a little weirder than that in the second movie, but I'm not going to really go into that until I get into the spoilery talk. In the meantime, why don't I go ahead and throw up the scores here? As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. I thought that both of these were fairly interesting movies, and I'm glad that I watched them, but I do have to admit that I enjoyed the first a lot more than the second. That being said, I would have to say that the second opens itself up to more debate and more conversation after the fact with other folks that have seen it, so it's a more engaging watch, at least on that level. But if you like some decently creepy imagery and some found footage films, then I would have to say that the Houses October Built series is a good watch for you, and I would heartily recommend it. So I think that should about do it for the spoiler-free talk. I want to go ahead and get into the spoiler-filled talk, so if you haven't seen either of these movies, or if you care about spoilers, please stop watching now. All right, we're back. So let's go ahead and talk some spoilers. Now, I said earlier that one of the words that I would use to describe this is mistrust. And I actually think that that was a fairly lackluster word. I think that there's a better one, but I didn't want to get into that just in case because it did eke into spoilers a little bit. And I think a better word than mistrust is consent. Consent is very much a topic that's been on a lot of our minds lately, especially over the last few years with the Me Too movement and our discussions that have arisen as a result of that about the nature of consent. And I think watching these movies just recently within the lens of the modern world, I would have to say that that is a really big aspect of this. When we're talking about going into extreme haunted houses, especially ones that tout themselves as having no safety words, shit like that, it really does take that level of fear because we are not only entrusting our safety to them, but we are also withdrawing our ability to provide a withdrawal of consent. We pay our money, we go in willingly, but maybe it could be too much for us down the road. Maybe it's triggering a particular phobia that we didn't know we had, and we want the ride to stop. Every person out there should be able to withdraw consent at any point and have that respected and honored immediately. And in the context of the first movie, that's where a lot of the scares come from, is the inability to do that as things really started getting rolling. As the situation was leaving their control, it was also eliminating their ability to withdraw consent. Yes, they were looking for Blue Skeleton all throughout the film, but once they found it, it was clearly more than they bargained for, and they wanted out, and they didn't have that option. Now, this is not the first time that I have seen both of these movies. I actually watched them a few years ago, and I have to say that my experience this time was very different. The first time I watched them, the first couple minutes of the second movie started rolling, and it pissed me off so much that these characters survived. It really felt like the sequel started standing up on a foundation that actually sullied the enjoyment of the first film. Like, it actually made the first film worse. And you know what? I don't think that anymore. I actually still do enjoy the first movie more, but I think it was an interesting shift of the narrative in terms of the whole consent thing to have it placed as far as instead of on the extreme haunt and the Blue Skeleton thing, instead actually having it take place within the confines of the RV and the friendship circle itself. Brandy wanted out. She didn't want anything to do with it. She opened up her lines by saying, nope. And that wasn't honored. It wasn't respected. All of her friends were basically saying, no, you don't understand. We got to do this. We got to do that. You know, these are the circumstances, and trying to talk her into it. I would have to say that after hearing her no, the most the conversation should have gone would be, would you be comfortable hearing all of the information so that you can make the most informed decision possible? And if not, walk away. But no, this movie was a constant reminder of gaslighting, of coercion, and just continually hammering away at her to get her to do things that she continually said she was uncomfortable with. So yeah, by the time the film reached its ultimate conclusion and she got introduced to the concept of what she was actually going through and why by the hands of these people that call themselves her friends, it stands to reason that she wanted at least a little piece of the pie of revenge. Yes, the tone and the dynamics of the second film did sully these characters, but I have to say, having watched it through a second time, and maybe it was knowing what I already knew that was influencing me, I have to say that there wasn't a whole lot redeeming about the characters in the first place. Yes, they operated on a very friendly level, they had some good banter, they had a good sense of humor with one another, they had a good chemistry and relationship. I don't doubt that in some way, either through the course of this production or outside of it, I actually haven't looked up anything about these folks, that they are friends, because it felt very natural. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that I would necessarily want to hang out with these characters in an RV for an entire autumn season. I actually think in retrospect it was an interesting and kind of almost brave choice to take these characters and turn them into something, well, quite villainous, really. But that's what I meant when I said earlier that I think that the second film, although I enjoyed the first one more, did make for more of debate fodder and more of a conversation piece. So on that note, I would love to hear what you have to say. If you've seen these movies, I would love to hear if you picked up on any of the things that I did. If you want to have a conversation about it, I would love to have that in the comments. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe. It would help me out a whole lot. And thank you again to Breha Organa for bringing this one up as one that I should watch and review. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.